by Noel Miragliotta, updated December 1, 2017, 201,349. In the lead-up to polling day, there were high expectations that One Nation would perform well at the Queensland state election. The party's leader, Pauline Hanson, was extremely confident about their prospects, a view that was shared by commentators, with claims that One Nation would win upwards of 6 seats and determine the likely outcome of government. There were, on the surface, sound reasons for believing that this would be a breakout election for One Nation. Queensland is arguably the birthplace of the party, and the home state of its founder and national leader. It has been in this state that One Nation enjoyed its formative success but also its best and most consistent electoral outcomes. At the 1998 state election, it secured 11 seats in the parliament, and 22.68% of the primary vote. It was also Queensland that continued to deliver support for One Nation candidates even when the party was in decline, electing candidates at the 2001, 2004 and 2006 state elections. Going into this election, One Nation was intent on not repeating the same perceived tactical error it committed at the WA election when it signed up to a contentious preference agreement with the Barnett Liberal government. Instead, it announced that it would put sitting MPs from the ALP and LNP last on its How to Vote card. Moreover, there were new opportunities for the party to influence the outcome of the election owing to the introduction of full preferential voting in Queensland in place of optional preferential voting. This opened up the prospect of One Nation benefiting from preference flows that would help it to win seats, or at least use its How to Vote card recommendations to influence the result in particular seats. Yet One Nation only managed to claim 1 seat. No shockwaves, but Hanson can claim success. Senator Hanson claims to be very pleased with the election result, but this claim is hard to believe given her prediction prior to the election that One Nation's performance would send shockwaves across the country. However, any assessment of a party's performance at an election depends on the criteria of evaluation. If the basis of the assessment is the party's primary vote, then One Nation was relatively successful, securing the third highest vote of any party at the election even though it contested only 65% of all seats. It attained a statewide primary vote of 13.69% across the 61 seats in which it fielded candidates. In slightly more than half of the seats it contested, One Nation achieved more than 20% of the primary vote. This is a relatively high vote share for a minor party. If the basis for assessment is using preference recommendations to influence the election, then One Nation can also claim to have had some impact. The aim of the party's preference strategy was to unseat sitting major party members, regardless of their partisan affiliation. This strategy contributed to the LNP's loss of at least 4 Brisbane-based seats. In doing so, the outcome affirmed the threat that One Nation poses to the Conservative parties. However, by and large, parties are judged on their ability to translate their electoral support into legislative representation. On this measure, One Nation's performance in Queensland was underwhelming. European-style populism not at play here. There are several factors that affected One Nation's performance at this election, and these are likely to be recurring obstacles for the party. The first was the assumption that the populist wave that had propelled many anti-establishment parties in Europe would automatically translate into high levels of success for One Nation at this election. There is little doubt that One Nation is an anti-establishment party, which supports a similar mix of issues that have proven electorally advantageous for populist parties elsewhere, such as anti-Muslim sentiment, anti-immigration, opposition to globalization, and pro-nationalism. Certainly, studies have found that one of the distinctive characteristics of One Nation voters is their shared grievances on questions of race and immigration. However, One Nation's ability to fully exploit this issue may prove somewhat weaker in Australia today than it was in the 1990s when the party first emerged. This is not because such concerns have receded, only that they have been somewhat neutralized by the bipartisanship the major parties have displayed on the issue of asylum seekers. The second factor which affected One Nation's prospects at this election was the absence of a second house elected on the basis of proportional representation. Like all parties, and minor parties especially, One Nation stands its best chance of gaining seats under proportional electoral systems as against majoritarian ones. Currently all elected One Nation members occupy seats in upper houses elected on the basis of proportional representation. In the absence of these arrangements in Queensland, One Nation had to hope that its candidates could win seats on primary votes, or attract at least 30% of the primary vote and a strong flow of secondary preferences. The party's prospects of being able to rely on secondary preferences was dashed, however, by Labour's decision to place them last on their how-to-vote cards. This undercut One Nation's chances in those seats where the contest was fought between their candidates and those of the LNP. For example, preferences from eliminated Labour candidates would likely flow to the LNP contestant and thereby help to secure the win for the LNP in a three-cornered contest. One Nation shows little capacity for learning. Third complication for One Nation, and arguably the biggest of the three, is that they seem perennially unable to organize and campaign effectively. One Nation has failed to make the transition from a grassroots niche party into a professional party. While some within One Nation might regard this as a badge of distinction, it carries real costs for the party. The party struggles to field candidates in every lower seat, which is important for any party with pretensions of being viewed as a future party of government. It also suggests something about their ability to attract willing and able candidates. In seats where it does run candidates, the party is frequently forced to defend itself against accusations of bullying from disgruntled candidates, and it is regularly defending or censuring pre-selected candidates for inappropriate comments or behavior. Many of the problems which blighted One Nation first time around, from concerns about the use of donations and complaints about the power held by party advisors, to the very ugly defections for its elected representatives, show little signs of improving. What this suggests is that One Nation shows little capacity for learning. These issues will become more critical for One Nation over time. A party that is unable to present as a credible and stable alternative runs the risk of trying the patience of voters who increasingly have recourse to other options. One Nation is no longer the only populist party on the landscape, even if it is the most identifiable. In the period since the One Nation's second coming, the right ideological spectrum is more crowded and competitive than it was when the party first appeared in 1997. It is now joined by Qatar's United Party, KAP, Cory Bernardi's Australian Conservative Party ACP, and the Jackie Lambie Network JLN. KAP demonstrated its effectiveness and appeal by picking up 2 seats at the Queensland election without the fanfare or missteps which dogged One Nation. While these other party vehicles might not be led by individuals with the same degree of star power as Senator Hanson, and have a predominant state-based presence, they nonetheless campaign on similar cultural issues of significance to the One Nation voter base. Unless One Nation can find a way of professionalizing its operations, and establish its viability independent of Senator Hanson, its chances of emerging as a permanent fixture of the Australian party system are likely slim. Narelle Miragliotta is a senior lecturer in the Department of Politics and International Relations, Monash University. Topics: Elections, State Parliament, Federal Party Issues, Parliamentson, One Nation, ALP, Liberal National Party Queensland, Bob Katter, Queensland, Australia. First posted November 30, 2017. 141,249